My buddies call me Frostin'. I was a big bass guide in the Blue Ridge Mountains of western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and North Georgia for over a decade. I sold my guide business, my tackle shop, my boat service center, and my real estate for my new venture, fishtips.com. Now my family and I travel the country helping fishing guides, pro anglers, and influencers from all corners of the U.S. catching all different species, create content, and scale their businesses digitally on fishtips.com. Join us on this wild adventure. Hey, if you enjoyed this educational video today, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We're always rolling out educational content, fun content, fish catching content, adventure content, everything. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am going to be answering a question that I get literally every week, actually probably every day, multiple times a week on tons of different videos across my channel. You know, obviously, if you guys have followed the channel for quite some time, you know that I love throwing big swim baits. I've been a big swim bait fan literally for, north of 15 years. I've been throwing big swim baits. I guided with them for over a decade, and I have a bunch of different rods that I utilize, and everything that I talk about today, I will put links down in the description of this video. You can go and follow those links and buy the product, but I also encourage you, if you have the ability to shop local tackle shops mean a ton to me. Obviously, Dream Catchers Fishing, I founded, and I just have a huge heart for, and just local tackle shops in general. If you have the opportunity to support your local tackle shop, do it. But if you don't, everything I talk about today will be down in the description of this video, and I would appreciate it if you use those links because they do help me produce more videos just like this. But first and foremost, when I think about big swim baits, maybe like a Hinkle shad, really what I would say, like anything that's above 6 ounces, 6 to 7, 8 ounces, I'm thinking about a Deps 250, Hinkle shad. I am a huge fan of the Tatula Elite swim bait rod. This is an 8-foot rod. It's up to 9 ounces. They're obviously silver rods. That's how you know them. They're great price point too. I want to say maybe like $220, maybe just $200 if I'm not mistaken. But the rod is awesome. I've caught so many giant fish on this exact setup. It's got a really nice soft tip and it's super parabolic. And I pair that up with a 300 sized reel. This is a Daiwa Tatula 300. I've got 25-pound fluorocarbon on this. Sometimes I use CXX 25, sometimes 20, but that setup right there is my setup for my big swim baits. My Hinkle shad, Deps 250s, other big glide baits I utilize. That is my setup. It has caught so many fish over the years. It's freaking awesome. Anytime you're throwing those really big swim baits, like you can't even talk about the Hinkle trout. I go to a 867, a Dobbins 867. I don't have one with me. I sold all my Hinkle trouts. I sold my 867. I actually cut down the 867 and made it an 8-footer. I called it an 808, like an 8-foot 8 weight. It was an absolute beast to throw that Hinkle trout. The rod is just so long, it's so gaudy. But that elite rod, that 8-foot elite rod, Tatula Elite, is so good for that kind of, what I would say, like as big as you want to go with your tournament glide baits, is that, that 9-inch shad profile. And that one gets the job done for the Hinkle. I would even throw a clutch boss on it, but it's a little overpowering for the boss. But anyways, let's talk about the next setup. This is a Kage 7'9". It's the same blank though as the 7'9" Tatula bass rod, which I think is like $180. Most of the Tatula bass rods, Daiwa, are right at that $150, $160 price point. I think the swim bait rod obviously is just more material. It costs a little more to produce the rod, but the 7'9" rod, it's the same blank as the Kage. The Kage is made for like small tackle shops. It's their own deal for small tackle shops. This rod is great. It's rated for up to 5 ounces. And I throw mostly like my smaller shad glides on it. So This is a trick shad, a 7-inch trick shad, bull shad trick shad. I like throwing the 6-inch on this rod. I like throwing the 8-inch on this rod. I can even throw the boss on it because that clutch boss is a thinner profile. It's super thin profile, super you know, natural light bait. But that rod is an absolute beast, super awesome. Once again, like all these rods have similar characteristics. They've got a good little tip on them where I can really jerk that rod and work it, but they have that parabolic bend down here where when you're fighting those fish and those fish are head shaking, you don't want a rod to be too fast, right? So a fast tip means it kind of springs back too fast. So as they're shaking their head, it springs and loads and unloads so fast, a lot of times you can shake those fish off. You want a rod that has that big parabolic backbone, so when they're head shaking, that rod is really absorbing those head shakes. So the 7'9", this is the Kage, but like I said, the 7'9" Tatula, same blank, is an awesome, awesome rod. I got it paired up with a Tatula 150. A lot of guys are like, oh, you got to have a 200 size reel because of the spool. That's just not true. You think about it, I think it's just a waste of line, one, just using that much line. But when you're using a Tatula 150, you know, you're keeping, I don't know, like 6 or 7 cast lengths on that reel. And honestly, I still back my spool with braid. So I'm only putting on like, I don't know, 75 yards at a time. That's a bomb cast. That line is going to be good for a month or two. Maybe a month, and then I can re-spool it. But I'm using 20-pound fluorocarbon. This is the Daiwa Samurai fluorocarbon, the hidden concept. So it's kind of got that olive green tint, but totally disappears in the water. And that deal's awesome. Even today, I caught a really nice fish on fork, 5-pounder. On that exact deal, I saw it in a brush pile. In about 18 foot of water, I sunk this booger down, and he just flew out of the brush pile. Absolutely cracked it. And yeah, it was an awesome bite. The rod held up. The fish was foul hooked, not foul hooked like on the side. It had hit it and then just had a hook in the side of its cheek, and it came up head shaking and thrashing, wallering, whatever you want to say. It was going crazy. And I'm like, oh man, like traditionally, if you have the wrong rod set up, that bait is getting thrown and you're freaking getting angry, you're missing that fish, whatever. This rod handled it no problem. It was awesome. Got the fish in the boat. And I'm telling you guys this, I don't care. You can look at all of my glide baits. I am using ST41 hooks, owners. It's the ones with they bend a little bit in. They have the cut point on them. Big gauge. When those fish eat that bait, those fish stay pinned. It's such a big gauge. Once it penetrates, it's got a huge barb and it just doesn't back out. I don't lose fish. And I've had other swim bait guys tell me I'm crazy and I should never throw those hooks because it destroys their mouths. I'm like, I've never had it really destroy their mouth in a terrible way, and I'd never lose them. So, you know, those hooks are great. I feel like this whole setup, Tatula 150, 7'9", like I said, Tatula swim bait rod. This one's the Kage, it's the same blank. That rod and reel setup, 20-pound fluorocarbon, those hooks on kind of your 3 to 5 ounce, really what I would say is 2.5 to 4 ounce glide baits. Lethal combo. I mean, I've thrown the clutch darter on this rod and smashed big ones on it. I think it's a little overpowering for the darter. I throw this rod for my my Klash 9, my DRT Klash 9. If you're looking for a good Klash 9 rod, this thing has that it's a good tip but a soft backbone. And whether you're cranking that Klash 9, whether you're cranking a tiny Klash, this is the rod I use with a tiny Klash. Not all the time. I have another rod that I think is better for the tiny Klash now, but that rod right there, dude, is off the chain nice. And yeah, that whole setup, foolproof. Yeah, you can't mess it up. This thing catches them. Yeah, that's a bad to the bone rod. I can't tell you honestly. I think I honestly probably have 400 fish catches on this exact swim bait rod reel setup. Not line. I put new line on. Let's go to the next rod. All right, so I want to give a shout out to my sister, Ben Milliken. He designed this rod. This is the Milliken, I think it's the MFer series swim bait rod, and this is a 7'9" rod, and this booger is rated for 3 to 7 ounces. So I have thrown the Hinkle Shad on this rod. I do feel like the Hinkle Shad's a little much for this rod. Dude, this rod is so freaking nice. I busted a really big fish the other day on it, 7 and change at fork, and this morning I caught one that was 5 pounds on it on the Boss. That Boss weighs like 3 3/4, maybe 4 ounces, something like that. This is rated 3 to 7 ounces, and this rod just feels good. It has the right length, so when I'm working it, I can put the butt of the rod into my ribs. I've got it paired up with a Tatula coastal reel. Now the coastal reel has those big kind of gaudy knobs on it. I had a reel laying around, so I just put the standard knobs on it from Daiwa. I do kind of wish it had the 150 or the 200 knobs, the power knobs, which is just like a bigger handle like that. But I'm not that picky, dude. I'm freaking just fishing. But anyways, the Boss on this rod is so freaking nice. The tip is just perfect. I can impart the perfect action, impart with the reel, and man, that's the deal. Like, this whole setup is a fish catching setup. And yeah, you know, so I think about, like, I've got my Hinkle setup, which is, you know, like, this rod is made for like really heavy baits, big baits, and this rod gets it done. And then I think about, like, the next level down is this booger, right? This one, that one's rated for up to 9 ounces. This one's a 3 to 7 ounce. And then the Kage, or the Tatula 7.9, same blank, is rated for up to 5 ounces. And these are the rods that I am utilizing the most in my swim bait setup. You know, I've got a rod that can handle all 3 glide baits. This is, you know, your lighter glide bait, and then a little bigger with the Boss, and then really big with the Hinkle. But let's go and talk about my other 2 setups that I'm utilizing quite a bit when I'm swim baiting. This is the Spro KGB rod, and this is a 7'9" rod, and it's rated for up to 3 ounces. Now, this rod has been my go-to for the DRT Tiny Klash, and even like a smaller glide bait like the Echo right there, the Clutch Echo, Flow Glider right here, the Flow Glider, just my smaller glide baits, 3 ounces it's rated up to. But the thing about this rod that I love is it is really soft and parabolic, and it's so light. I mean, I get a perfect action with the smaller glide baits, but honestly, it feels like it's almost like a big, deep crankbait rod that can maybe handle a little bit more weight. I love the handle. The handle's perfect length. It's got that nice grip, sweet graphite in the ribs. I mean, this rod is so freaking nice. I utilize it with my smaller glide baits. I've thrown the bull shads on it, but like I said, the darter, the Clutch darter, the DRT Tiny Klash, those, oh my gosh, this rod just performs so well with this, with those baits. This rod is absolutely awesome. And once again, I've got it paired up on a Tatula 150 20-pound fluoro carbon line, through and through, gets the job done. And that deal absolutely is a beast. It's like one of those deals, like those rods, I feel like it's a good fight, right? The fish have power, I have power, but ultimately I have more power over the fish. This rod freaked me out when I first started using it, because I'm like, man, it's definitely like lighter action, because it's more parabolic. It's just a softer rod all the way around, meant to handle just less heavy baits. But man, this thing keeps them pinned so well. I was like, when I first used it, when I first felt it, I was like, that's gonna be the rod that lands every fish for me on a dart or some of my smaller glide baits. And sure enough, it was. Like, I think I've missed very few fish unless they just bit it funny or kind of awkward. That rod right there is a special rod, man. But you know, I don't want you to make the mistake I made early on in my swim bait career. I was just like, I'm gonna manhandle these fish, and I had just such stiff rods, big rods, rated for such, you know, just heavy baits. I'm like, I'm just gonna winch these fish in, and dude, it just did not work. I can tell you numerous fish that were 8-plussers, some 9-plussers, some I honestly believe 10-plussers, fish of lifetimes, that came off because I was just hard-headed thinking I'm going to be in control of this fish and I'm going to get it and boat flip it. Dude, you want a rod that can take the pressure off and it fights the fish for you, keeps them pinned well. Don't make the mistake of having too fast of a rod. These rods are awesome, and this is kind of my light swim bait setup, right? So I'll call it my up to 3 ounces. That's the Spro KGB Tatula 150. The next rod up in the arsenal is that 7'9" Tatula or 7'9" Kage. Once again, like I can throw the tiny Klash on this rod, I can throw the tiny Klash with this rod, but when I start getting into my bull shads, a little bit bigger shad glides, I'm gonna go to this rod. This booger's really great for those thin herring glide baits and so forth, but you know, up to 3 ounces, up to 5 ounces, and then the MFer rod, Ben's rod, up to 7 ounces, and that's where it really shines with the boss, and it's really good for the bull shad as well. And then really up to 9 ounces is this booger, the Tatula Elite. But those are my swim bait setups, and honestly, there's going to be guys that say Dobbins. I have sold Dobbins for years. I've used Dobbins for years. I've used them all. I owned a tackle shop. I mean, geez, like I feel like I've used at some point, just from my guides owning different rods and so forth, I've used them all. And I'm just telling you, these are the rods that I feel like are the best. And the reels, I use a Tatula 150 on almost everything except my Hinkle and really big baits. I go to a Tatula 300, but a Tatula 150. If you want to buy a 200 just to say you're holding more line, all you do it, get a Tatula 200. But these rods and reels are great. I catch almost every fish that bites. I lose very few fish because of my whole treble hook setup. And yeah, I mean, I just honestly feel like all the fish are getting in the boat, and those are the rods that I'm utilizing. So I always have a ton of people, like every week I see someone comment, what's your favorite swim bait rod? I have made this video for you, and I will tag this video to everyone that comments further. What's your favorite swim bait rod for this swim bait or that swim bait? That is the deal. But anyways, I hope you found this educational. I hope now you know what I'm using so you can take it and get your own stuff and use it and catch fish like I do. You know, those are my go-to rod and reel setups. I also have a 7'3" Tatula that I use for line throughs. It's a heavy regular bend. I actually have it right here. This is the last rod. This is the 7'3" Tatula swim bait rod. It's part of the same lineup as the 7'9" Tatula swim bait rod. I use line throughs with it. I'll use a tiny Klash with it, DRT, tiny Klash, the darter, all of them. That booger right there, baby. Yeah, so I'll use this one in tandem with the Spro rod. Like, what if I have like the darter on one rod, I'll have the tiny Klash on this rod. Or if I have the tiny Klash on this rod, I'll have the darter on this rod. Or maybe I have, you know, the darter on one rod, and then I have the Clutch Eco on the other rod. But those are kind of my smaller glide bait rods. I almost forgot that rod right there, and that's just a freaking Fuego. And you guys might be like, what, $100 reel? Daiwa Fuego, $100. That SOB absolutely gets her done. That thing is so strong. 20-pound fluorocarbon. I can do everything with it. Same thing, crank with it, you know, do crank down baits with it, wake baits with it, whatever, little glide baits. That's the deal. So those are all 5 of my swim bait rods. I think they're the best, and I feel like they're the best, and I fish with a lot of confidence, and I keep those rods locked in my hand more because I think they're the best. So it makes a difference, you know, if I can lock that bait in my hand longer, I'm gonna make more casts with it. And you know, when you're swim bait fishing, the more casts you can make, the chances of catching a really big fish goes up. And so essentially, if you're confident in your swim bait setup, you're confident in everything, it's gonna help you put more fish in the boat because you're gonna be, you know, have more confidence to pick it up and keep throwing it, which is going to lead to more fish and bigger fish swim baiting, which might lead to more tournament wins. It might lead to better memories, whatever it is. But you know, I hope that you guys learned that these are my setups and this is what I do. So anyways, I appreciate you guys a ton for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and yeah, see y'all next time.